I'm mom and a social media marketer, and I'm so honored to be moderating the panel tonight for the first ever video preview by Heard and Rye. And this is a wonderful film called Screenagers about the impact of the digital age on kids and how to help them avoid harmful effects and find balance. And I think, as many of you know, with what's going on in town, I think this is just very nice fit that we need to look at kids all ages and the impact of what's happening in our community. So I'd like to introduce our panel, and what we're going to do is each panelist will get a question, and then afterwards that'll be about 15 minutes, and then the next 15 minutes we'll use for questions from the audience. So you can just raise your hand and keep thinking about all those great insights. I mean, I just have to say this film blew my mind, especially about teen boys spending 11 hours video gaming at a time, and then the study about the mice and the long-term effects of being on video games and on the computer so long can really impact our children's long-term well-being. So I think it's great in this movie to just see the data and the facts and really how it all links together and arms us as parents with our parenting strategies with our children. So let's introduce our panel. So first we have Kristen Savlov, Rye Youth Council Elementary School advocate, and she holds a BS in Behavioral Science and a Master's of Science in Mental Health and Counseling. She works with each 3rd and 4th grade class in the Rye City School District for 10 to 12 hours a week, really offering individual and group lunches throughout the year to help maintain and support the children's abilities to navigate the school environment. Her goal is to support our children and give them knowledge and tools necessary to navigate their elementary school year successfully. And I think she's going to have some really interesting insights to share about the impact of the internet and what our young elementary kids are saying. Next I have Ann Michaelis. And Ann, not only is she co-chair of Heard and Rye, she also has a practice in Rye called the Parent Practice. She conducts effective parenting groups in Connecticut, Westchester, and New York. She even did this also in the UK with the Parent Practice for 6 years, and we're so lucky to have her here in Rye with her wisdom. And then next we have Claire Neary, who is founder and director of My Remarkable Self, which probably many of you guys have heard of. And in fact, today my son had the honor of hearing them talk at a Nemora Take Your Child to Work Day, which was really special. And the goal of their organization is to provide classes and workshops to help kids become successful socially, emotionally, and academically. And Claire received her graduate education from Columbia and Bank Street College of Education. And she began her career at the Family Services of Westchester, creating and running a program for youth at risk. And she's also the faculty at the Ursuline School in New Rochelle. And then we have Natalie Rosen, a life coach, who is also accredited substance abuse counselor and mental health specialist. As an individual and family life coach, her areas of expertise are with addiction, mental health disorders, ADHD, and executive function difficulties. Her office is here in Rye, and you can definitely visit her website at natalierosen.com. So let's go into the questions. So first, for Natalie, with regards to Andrew and the issue he had, he was the one that at the end of the movie had to go into an internet addiction center. I had never heard of that before, but it really makes a lot of sense. We're able to see that this type of addiction has a profound impact on family life. What are you seeing in our community? And what are some of the signs that we as parents need to be looking out for? And then what are some of the local resources that our families can work with?
Well, what's interesting is because I had a client just like Andrew, and I did all the research to try to find, because these children don't fit the profile of an addict per se to go to rehab or what we think of as going to something for addiction. And what's interesting is the place they mentioned, Restart in Seattle, is the only place right now in the country that takes kids that have a problem with addiction. So I myself, being an addiction specialist, started doing things to help these kids and the parents because it does mimic exactly addiction. I mean, for example, you saw Andrew. He started doing terrible in school. He stopped eating. He isolated, stopped communicating with his friends, lost a lot of weight. And those are the same things that addiction with drugs or alcohol can do. And I also see a lot of children you could get in trouble with the law because, a lot of these children who are addicted to the games or the girls shopping on the internet start stealing the credit card and start shopping online and start gaming online. And it's just also a false sense of reality. But we call another reason why addiction doesn't stand alone. And there are signs for your child, especially if there's addiction in the family, whether there's mental health, whether there's like depression, anxiety, ADHD, addiction per se. There are a lot of similarities that you can sort of see even when they're young, and to see how they behave with the computer and see why are they using it. It's just like everybody, but nobody wants to be an addict or an alcoholic, whether it's just a computer or a drug or food or what have you. And some children can play a game and leave it. You got to watch to see what happens to that child when they start playing, and it starts off as fun, and then like you saw his behavior, taking it away and not being able to function and losing sense of time and losing sense of reality and not eating. This happens. So you just have to watch it, and then like they said, you have to do the rules like everybody else has to follow the rules or it will make no sense. And with this child that I had, we put him in somewhere. It wasn't a rehab, but it was for mental health because, as I was saying, it doesn't stand alone. They're using the computer as an escape for something else that is going on. And a lot of parents think, if they're playing on the computer, it's better off having them home than out doing drugs and drinking. So it's a really hard call because I understand that piece, and as parents, you understand that piece. So you got to sort of figure out what is it. Is he depressed? Is he being bullied? Because a lot of these kids do create friendships online. And it's like, oh my God, you don't want me to have friends. You don't want me to do this. You don't want me to do that. And in their heads, that's their lifeline. So it's very, very hard. And that's the same thing with the drug or the alcohol. It's like, take it away and like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And that's how it mimics addiction. And it shows, with the brain, it does the same thing. There's no off switch. So it just keeps on going. And what's really, really hard is because of our use now in schools with computers. And especially for the ADHD child, where you go to all these schools where everything is on the iPad. And ADHD and addiction with the computer sort of mimic each other. As you said, there's so much going on in the brain and it's flashing and flashing. The ADHD child already has that. So having them on the computer all the time and having it as a tool to learn and to do school is really hard. I can't believe they don't have books at some of these schools and stuff. So you can, if you ask, get that information and get the books instead of having everything.
Yeah, that's such a great overview, and I think the movie, Screenagers, really talked about these kinds of addictions and how, while that seems a little far-fetched, it definitely can be reality. So it's all about balance as a parent. So that really kind of tees up our question for Claire really well, which is, Claire, how can parents monitor their children's media? And if so, what restrictions are working well for parents with regard to screen time? In the movie, the doctor talked about Tech Talk Tuesday, where the family kind of got together and they talked about what made sense for them as a family with screen time, and really invited the children to be part of the dialogue.
Well, we work with kids ages 6 to 18 across the country at this point, so we've kind of heard it from all sorts of kids. And the first thing, as you can tell from the movie, is that technology doesn't discriminate. So it's an issue we all have to face. And the thing that research supports and what we see with our practice is that research undeniably supports the fact that the more solid communication you have with your child about technology and how you use it as an adult and how your kids are interested in using it will lessen the impact of both their chances of becoming a cyberbully or misusing technology, overusing it, and also lessen the impact of themselves becoming a victim of potential cyberbullying or other things online. So we can't tell you personally which are the best apps or which software is the best. What we will say, there's a bunch of websites. You can look on our website as a resource, which is www.myremarkableself.com. However, a website some of you may use, and we use it all the time, is commonsensemedia.org. It's fantastic, and there's a lot of recommendations on there. Everything from a dictionary, which will tell you the jargon that they use when they're texting. What does LOL mean? For those of you who don't know yet what that means. And it goes through everything so that you can monitor to the top-rated software monitoring programs that you can purchase, but it's a very personal choice. We highly recommend a contract. We do contracts with kids for all of our classes, just about the rules and how they're going to conduct in our classes when we work in different schools and workshops. But you need to partner with your child, and I think that was such a valuable point that the doctor made, is she put one on her daughter all in good faith and with great intent. But you have much likely a higher chance of success in the contract being lived up to if you partner with your child and say, well, what rules do you think are realistic for you? And some of them may be far-fetched, and then you negotiate and you have a conversation with them, and you may be really surprised, because even second and third graders will tell us amazing rules about respect and good digital citizenship, and then, well, they're going to throw it back to you. Well, you shouldn't be on your phone when you pick me up from school. You shouldn't be texting and driving. They catch on to everything. Definitely, the American Academy of Pediatricians, the Canadian Academy of Pediatricians will recommend devices should be out of the bedroom, whether you have a young adult or whether you have a third grader. And I know that might seem, for those of you with middle schoolers or kids who go to laptop schools or high schoolers, well, they're doing assignments till 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. If you start laying a foundation for rules and help them limit set and help them regulate and say, well, when you finish this assignment, you need to shut down your laptop and put it in a common room. It may be the family room, it may be the kitchen, it may be your own bedroom, and then devices go off. It impacts their sleep, and they need sleep. Their brains are not fully developed at that age, and that is so important. So we would say a contract that you create together. Definitely go into Common Sense Media, our website, and look through those softwares and those programs that you may find work for you. There are blocking ones. There are ones that you can get apps that shut down devices at a certain time at night. Apple has amazing parental controls, and we're constantly surprised at how many parents are unaware of how to use those controls. You go into settings and privacy, and you turn them on, and it goes through all the age ranges, from really early ages of toddler use up to young adulthood, from explicit language in lyrics to books to apps to educational programs. So there's a lot we can do in terms of restricting. And then last but not least, I would say don't oppose technology and walk away from here frightened, but embrace it. It's not going away. And make a commitment as a family to educate yourself and say, it's not going away, so how can we as a family best use technology in a positive way for educational purposes? How can we support creating online digital portfolios that are positive? So my child has a cookie crumb of positive things that they're building towards when they go to apply to high school, college jobs later on. They're leaving a wonderful footprint in the sand of the digital world. And so that would be our advice. And some of my teammates are here, we're around if you need us later.
You guys are such a great resource and doing such good programs. That was an excellent point, and especially about modeling, with us as parents. And I thought it was really interesting in the movie how the pediatrician talked about her children pointed out to her about, you need to be off your computer, you need to be off your phone. And I think that's so true for all of us. And to that very point, as a parenting coach, what are some of the things that you would suggest and that you do in your own home with this issue of modeling and contracts? And then also technology can be positive. So kind of like, and that's one of the great things about the Right Arts Center is doing so many great things with STEM and technology, and you can bring your kids here to do coding classes. So we want to encourage our kids, to look at those resources in our community.
Absolutely. So much of what you both talked about, the things that I do, I teach parenting classes over. It's very top of mind for me, and I read ferociously about social media, and I have a daughter, second grade daughter, who's in the midst of all of that stuff. So I hear what's going on, and I get scared like everybody else does, because I think sometimes it's so daunting. So what do I do within my own home? We're really clear, first of all, on what, as you said, what our values are. I kind of begin with the end in mind. What do I want my daughter to have as she heads into adult life? I want her to have that sense of self-control. I want her to be empathetic. I want her to have great relationships. I want her to be able to be a human being out in the human world. And I want her to be able to connect with people. So what do I need to be doing now, day to day, to make sure that that's going to happen? So once I'm clear on what my values are and what's important to me, then I need to create some rules around it. And I don't give her the rules. We create the rules. We talk about the rules. It's a living, breathing in our home, it's not a document because it hasn't come to that for us yet, and maybe it won't. I'll tell you what we did do. When she was 7, she got her first device. She's now almost 13. When she was 7, she got a little Nintendo DS. And I didn't want her to have the Nintendo DS. And so I was very clear back when she was 7 about what the rules would be. And I still have it. She wrote the rules out. And they're her rules. And this was up on our fridge for a long time. And this was the best thing I think that we did going back from when she was very young, because she quickly graduated to an iPad, and we never had battles around it because she was very clear what the expectations were. She was very clear that screen time was not taken away when she was bad, rather screen time was earned when she did what was required. So homework, and we have this little mantra in our home, when then. So when homework is done, then you earn your screen time. And so when homework is done and there's not enough time before bed to do screen time, then she begs it. So we do lots of different things like that. There's structure, there's clear limits, there's clear boundaries, and within there's definitely some flexibility, because it's impossible to be like really rigorous and strict on things like that. So we have values, we have rules, modeling. And that's the hardest one. So one of the biggest rules that we have in our home is, we call it tech table. And that just, it's 2 words, and it just means if you're at the table all by yourself, knock yourself out. You can have your gadget. If you're reading the newspaper or something like that, as soon as one other person sits down, it's gone. And we all have, it's not about parent telling child. She has just as much flexibility and freedom to call us on it as well, which she does regularly. And that's really important, because you can't go into a battle. If you've got the family rules are the family rules. They're not just you dominating and controlling your children with those rules. So modeling is really important. And I think that for me, how I really want to approach it is through connection and conversation, and teaching her that self-control, giving her that opportunity to develop those habits, so that she's got those habits, and she will make mistakes, and I will make mistakes, and my husband will make mistakes, and it's about really learning and continually going back to them. So it's the values, it's the rules, it's the connection, but it's really about setting it up proactively. So saying, what can I do to make sure that this is not going to be a problem? Rather than in the moment when they're on their screen and it's been 3 hours and you're having a ginormous battle because your child won't switch off. So how do I set it up so that's less likely to happen? That's where I like to focus my attention. And of course, because screen time is earned, it makes it a lot easier, because they know that it's not something they get just because they breathe. It can be earned, and when they feel like they've earned it, they've got a lot more stake in it. But similar to what Claire was saying, I have all that stuff just because I'm curious. I have an app, it's called Hourpact, Ourpact, and you can download it onto your iPhone, and you sync it to your children's devices. And so you can block their Wi-Fi access, you can block access to certain apps, you can schedule what they can use, Instagram, you can, all of that stuff. So you can do that, and I have it and I don't use it, but I have it just more out of curiosity. And the other thing that I do, just to wrap up really quickly, I talk to my daughter, because it's a crazy world out there. There's the sexting, the similar to what the lady who wrote Cinderella, my daughter, was talking about in the film. I talk to her all the time about what you're seeing on there, whether it's a Kim Kardashian completely photoshopped image. I talk to her about it's not real. It's not real. And who do you want to be? Who are you? Not just who you look, what you look like, and what you wear, and all of that stuff. So those are conversations that I have really regularly with my daughter, just so that she's aware of not only what's out there, but what to do if things happen.
Yeah, thank you. I loved your dialogue on modeling. That was great, and we'll definitely have to check out that app called Hourpact, which would be great. So Kristen, from a school's perspective, listening to this movie and the dialogue, what do you think schools can do? I understand you recently had an opportunity to sit down with the 4th graders and survey them as to what their concerns were around cell phones and technology, because it seems their children are getting phones and iPads much earlier than we expected.
Yes. I did have an interesting conversation with the fourth graders, and I was surprised to find out the majority of them were like, we're too young to get phones. And the reasons what they said was not only from their experience, but their siblings' experience, or their siblings' friends' experience, whatever it may have been. They just heard the stories of exposing each other and taking photos or videos of other people without them knowing, and bullying, cyberbullying. And they also said things like it takes up family time and it's very distracting. So I was a little surprised that they would actually admit to that and be that honest, but they were. And just in curiosity, I asked what my 15-year-old daughter, and I said, how do you feel about that? And she said the same thing. She goes, I wish they weren't phones, because I would be reading more and doing so many other things. So it was really interesting to see that they're really aware that what they're doing is a waste of time. They can be doing so many other things. So it was really interesting. What the schools could do is just support or reinforce the safety of using the internet, and telling them, even when they go on like the Minecraft games, talking to people all over the world, don't give them your names, your ages, and they might not know. They might think you're talking to another 9-year-old. So, oh yeah, I'm 9 and I live in Rye, and if you start saying those things, and they don't know who you're talking to. So you have to remind them, just don't put your full name on there, and don't give them too much information. And it's helpful if parents at home can say, if I'm going to give you the opportunity to go on these games, you have to be responsible. And with being responsible, you maybe ask permission before you go on, or if they're going to have something like Snapchat, that the parents also get it, so they can monitor what's going on with their kids, and they can see exactly what they're posting. And that goes for, older kids who are on Twitter and Facebook and all kinds of things, because they think they're being funny on all these different apps, when really they don't realize how exposing they're actually being to themselves and others. So it's really important that they learn the responsibility of that, even from 9 all the way, I would say some adults too, could probably learn a few things. So the schools to support the safety, I think that's the most important. The safety and just knowing the limits and how much information you should actually give somebody.
Excellent. So do we have questions from the audience?
Yeah, I'm pretty fascinated by the one guy, the boy that was playing the piano and said, oh, I can play the piano much better, and what you're saying, that they're aware of that they could do other things, but that there's the peer pressure. They still do, they still go online, and the 15-year-old still will spend all these hours on their Facebook, whatever they do, because it's peer pressure. But she realized, how does that work? And
she's going to miss out if she's not on it. So she has to be on it. She has to check it.
She has to.
Yes, it's just, you want to feel a part, you want to know what your friends are doing, and if you're not on there, then you feel like you might
So
be
if you don't react on Instagram, if you don't like others, are you going to be left out?
Yes, they feel that way. This is the first Generation Z, the kids born after 9/11, that are culturally connected in every way, shape, or form. They don't remember anything else. So very quickly, even if they don't get devices until their 5th grade, which is considered later now, they're surrounded by it from their parents, their grandparents, their teachers, their schools, and their friends. And they hear about a party, they see what someone posted. The kids are on the Musical.lys, the Dub Smashes, the Instagram Snapchats, and it goes like wildfire. So there's immense pressure in their sense of self. Remember, kids are so social in those elementary years through middle school. That's their world, the center of the universe. So if they're not on it and they're not responding, I mean, think about how we feel. Like, we respond, we can't help it ourselves. We're responding to our friend's text right away about, can we pick up a kid, can we do this carpool? So then imagine that for a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old. It's tripled.
So I think part of it is not blocking it all together. I mean, part of your rule could be that for 2 hours you do your homework, and then for every 20 minutes you can check for 5 minutes. If that's, you have to figure out what's going to work for you. All the experts in your own children have got to figure it out. That's why it's so important to sit down and then figure out what the rules are. What's going to work?
But there is also in regard to that, a fine line, because some, like, I agree with you, like, like, when you get home from school, check to see what everybody's doing, and then whatever. If there's a social time or what have you, but as everybody's saying, to have set limits of when you can and when you can't use the phone. Because there is a fine line, and there are kids that become addicted to where you saw Andrew, where that can happen, and you've got to watch out for that. And that's where I specialize in the addiction piece, because a lot of these kids, if you don't nip that in the bud and you take away the computer too fast, an addict is an addict is an addict, not to scare anybody here, but then you got to watch the behavior. Do they turn to something else? And yes, it's scary, and yes, it's not fun, but just that part needs to be on top of too. And that's where you have to sort of watch your child to see where the fine line is.
I think that part of it is also teaching them, because I think when we were all children, I don't know, in my house, we were not allowed to make a phone call after 6 o'clock. And if somebody called our house after 6 o'clock, that was considered the height of rudeness. And so now, and it's again, it's the modeling. So much of this is modeling, and it's really hard for me because I use it for work. I get emails, organizing carpools, all sorts of things, right? It's all there. If somebody really, my dear friends over here, they will call me if I'm not texting back. Sometimes, which is great, because sometimes I don't, sometimes I switch off. If my daughter's doing homework and I'm helping her, I switch it off. Because, or I cut out all the beeps that come up for text message. I don't get the little alert sound anymore. Anything like that that's just going to get me distracted, I've eliminated all of that stuff from my phone. So I don't have it anymore. So it's so much of it is just about being able to model that etiquette as well. And it all goes back to the rules. What are your rules?
That's a question.
Yeah, when it comes to the rules, I really picked up some interesting things that I am definitely going to try at home. In the household, we have 4 children, and 2 of them are in middle school. We definitely have rules, not set on paper, but discussed, and this one seems to evolve. You learn as you go, and for us it's not breakfast time, all of a sudden they're on their phone more than 5 minutes, so then you have to sort of rediscuss it, and sort of, it goes up and down, and you learn as you go along. But do you make different rules for different kids? Or is it the house? So that's what that's sort of my next phase.
I think it depends.
What happens? What is your experience with other families?
It depends on
you can have very mature 8th grader and an extraordinarily immature 8th grader who could be on the same level with your 3rd grader. So it depends.
Yeah, but do you then say, because we have the rule, at a certain time, they have different bedtimes, so that taking away the phones is in line with the bedtimes. So it was a very simple, obvious. But then one is more hooked than the other. You then.
So what I've done with families is you establish you start off where everybody's the same, and depending, as Anne was saying, with the earned behavior and earning it. So if everybody's the same and one child, doesn't earn because he didn't finish his homework or he did something, then that is taken away. But the other child shouldn't be punished for it. But it's all what everybody's saying. The family rules in general, the values, the morals, whatever you want to instill on your family, in essence, are the same for everybody, because it's just how your family operates. And then depending on each child and what their needs are and how they respond, you sort of have to tweak it. So that's why.
Does that work in what you've seen?
Yes.
Because you sort of discuss it with your child.
Yeah. Yes, but you start off with a family code.
Yeah, that's what sort of we have now. Now we're stepping.
And I also kind of use the Spider-Man mantra: with great responsibility, with great privilege comes great responsibility. So if you have extra privileges, perhaps you have extra responsibilities that you would exactly understand before. You can get, just as a guideline, I would not recommend as she did in the film, giving a 5-page document saying you shall do this. That's not going to work. And I would not just download something and just get them to sign it. You need to have a conversation. And going back to the advocates, where I printed all this stuff up, this is one thing I would love to teach my daughter about social etiquette online. Think before you write. think and certainly think people understand, is it true, is it helpful, is it inspiring, is it necessary, and is it kind? And if it's missing even one of those things, go ahead and think it, but do not send it. Just don't
We tell
send it.
kids the 3 Ps, don't text, post, say anything online that you wouldn't tell your police, principal, or a parent. It's really easy for little kids to remember as they earn the privileges of becoming then a little bit more abstract in thinking and deeper or more entrenched in the media. And that sticks, the 3 Ps, or stop, block, and tell. If you need to remove yourself from something, stop, think about what you're receiving or seeing, block it, and then tell a trusted adult. So those are kind of 2 things you teach your kids.
And I also tell them, if you feel you need to text for my client, if you feel you need to text me first. If you're uncertain, text me first, then we'll discuss it, or have someone you can text it to. If they're still like in that, because it's just like instant gratification. You get the text, or you see something on Facebook, and if you're not sure, I'll tell them, send it, and if you're not sure, you shouldn't send it.
So let's take another from the audience.
Yeah, just have a question for the panel. I thought what Suzanna said, that the research about mice was incredibly fascinating, and how actually screen time has a long-term effect on brains. And I was wondering if there's any research known how it affects the brain in kids long-term.
Yeah, there's a lot of research on positive too.
Yes.
Minecraft in game, that's a great example. I think most people know it, that it is helping. And they did allude to it also, the helping games. So there's a lot of research that those, but again, you need to seek them out and see what's best for your kids and how they're using it. So do they get themselves lost in those worlds, and again, limiting it? So there are a lot of amazing educational tools out there, and we say that technology can be used for amazing things. From research, there are a lot of graphite.org is an amazing site where it has a lot of apps for positive digital portfolios. We say whether your child, graphite.org, whether your child's interested in creative writing, they can blog, music, sports, so you can help them develop those tools and interests. And then there's the research that supports that it can compromise brain function, but again, it depends. It's so new, and our children, the post 9/11 kids, they're so young, so there's a lot of inconclusive research out there as to, we don't know what the true long-term effects will be when it comes to addiction, compromised performance from academics, social emotional development. We're seeing a lot more research with the inability to communicate, conflict resolution, express themselves. So we say, at my home, I have a landline, and I have taught every one of my children to answer the phone and say, hello, my name is, so they know how to say, hi, Mrs.
Exactly.
And that's just my rule, but they don't know how to do that anymore.
No.
Because there aren't phones, there are no pay phones around, so they can't make a call. So how can you walk into a social setting and look a teacher in the eye, look an adult in the eye, ask for help, or introduce yourself? So there's little things, but the research is, I would say, I don't know, right? It's
Absolutely,
inconclusive.
but because it's also been for kids, with autism and on the spectrum, and it's a great learning tool, and who have speech deficits. It's and a way to communicate. So none of us are saying that the computer is not beneficial.
Right.
It's just what you do with it and how it's used, and that's the important piece.
It's a tool.
I also think that when we debate and discuss about this, there's so many different components about it that we actually have to split them apart when we're talking about it. So, of course, there's a lot positive, but some of the elements have to do with how long is a child on it, and what is the effect of that. Another aspect is, the bullying. Another aspect is, how does it affect communication? And I think when we speak about screen time, we speak about it in general terms, and yet I think it becomes really important to kind of, break it down so that we actually have a conversation where we're speaking about one of these specific things, because there's so many different aspects.
I think going back to your question about the guidelines, I think there are a lot of organizations that do, I think Common Sense Legal is one of them, that do provide guidelines. I know there was an Australian study a few years ago now that stated that children below 2 should not have, or should have very, very limited screen time. I just read recently, there was a great Scientific American magazine that came out recently that said in 2017, results of a huge British survey of 2,500 children, The survey is called Screenagers, Study of Cognition, Adolescents and Mobile Phones, will come out in 2017. So I think that'll be a really interesting one to look out for.
And also, I think that to that very point, I also found the research fascinating about the multitasking.
Mhm.
And I wonder, how that really impacts us as adults. Kristen, do you have anything you want to say about kids in schools and multitasking?
Well, I feel like the kids feel like that they're doing a lot more, but they don't realize that they're doing it a lot slower. And they're not totally focusing on their task. So it isn't complete. And even my 15-year-old daughter said it when I asked her a list of stuff to do. She says, "Yeah, I feel like I'm doing all these things, but in the end, I'm really doing it a lot slower, and I'm not doing it how I really wish that I want to if I didn't have all these other things going on."
Well, there's also been studies showing versus note-taking with the computer and learning versus handwriting, and how, there's so much more muscle memory and learning, and the brain uses so much more power to handwrite and focus and listen, that you're learning a lot better, or they might be able to resuscitate it right away, but it's not held in the brain.
Right, so if you don't mind, maybe what we'll do is we'll take one more, and then I think it's going to be a wrap, because the writer has to call us up. Is there anybody else who has one more question? I'll let you go again.
If anyone else.
Did you have a question? Oh, anyway.
Is this homeschooling shows with the kids? Elementary school. I mean, it started getting when they were young this day, and my fourth grade been asking for a year. I said no. This is my rule. You're getting it part 2 at the end. But I want him to see the impact first. It's almost like you have to go through experience and have that person tell you. That have him realize this is why my mom didn't want to give it to me, because we weren't talking. And my roots, my family, we have to sit together at least Saturday or Sunday. Nobody has to go, and we just, I cook. I want to share. I want to talk. A lot of times they don't say much as a boy. I have 2 boys, but I should talk about you have a girlfriend or something. So this is my, so I think this film is amazing, and I think that some young should see that. It's one of the reasons from the school.
This is great. Well, thank you everyone for such a wonderful panel. I think that hopefully it was interesting. We were even talking, Beth was saying to one of the middle school PTO presidents, is there possible to share it with their children? It could be very relevant.
So the license that we have for these screenings is that we can do a community screening, which is this, and included in the community screening is a school screening. So if any of you want to round up your schools really quickly in the next day or 2, please go right ahead. Or if even in a classroom, if a teacher's willing to show and take some time out, we're more than welcome.
But even the YouTube, the quick thing has enough of an impact to show, and it's a good thing, a learning tool to start a dialogue at home. Everybody at the table, like your Tech Tuesdays, take that YouTube video and watch it and then talk about it.
Excellent. Well, thank you everyone. Have a great night.